Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel. Captain Selene Hayes stared at the flickering hollow message and rubbed her temple. For 15 years, she had captained the freighter Celestial Wanderer, hauling everything from high-density ores to illicit biotech across the fringe sectors. She'd seen her share of desperate clients, but never one quite like this. The message was short, almost desperate. Our credits are gone, human, except our starship. Selene keyed her comms. Identify yourself, she said, her voice steady despite her racing mind. The reply came almost instantly, a smooth voice with an odd resonance. We are Oron and Scylla, it said. Meet us in the lower maintenance tunnels of Helio Station, discretion guaranteed. The name Helio Station elicited a groan. The Frontier Coalition had recently ramped up inspections there, making it a bureaucratic nightmare. Yet Selene's ship sat in need of costly repairs and her resources were dwindling fast. Economics was simple: repair costs or reliable cargo. The offer of an entire starship, whatever that meant, was worth the risk. An hour later, Selene clanked down rusted metal stairs into a dimly lit tunnel. The walls were engraved with alien glyphs half-erased by time. Her boots echoed on the grated floor. The only light came from her tactical lamp and the occasional emergency beacon. Despite the chill, sweat beaded at her brow. Instinct warned her that this was no ordinary handoff. At the far end of the corridor, two figures emerged from shadow. Both were tall, nearly 2 meters, but lithe in build. Their skin glowed faintly as if charged by an inner current. One had eyes like liquid silver, the other held her slightly downcast, glowing with a soft violet hue. Neither wore insignia, only form-fitting suits that shimmered with shifting patterns. I am Oron, the taller one announced, voice calm yet resonant. This is my sister Scylla. We require passage to Obsidian Reach. His words hung in the stale air, charged with an urgency that set Selene's instincts on edge. She slipped a hand toward her sidearm but held her ground. The transport hub is upstairs, Selene said cautiously, motioning with one hand. There are plenty of freighters headed toward the core, docking fees apply. Authority crackled in her tone, she needed answers fast. Scylla stepped forward, graceful as a dancer. Conventional routes are too public, we were told you could help discreetly. She paused, studying Selene's face. We have no credits, but we can offer something far more valuable. Selene raised an eyebrow. More valuable than credits? Her laugh sounded hollow even to her own ears. Credits were universal currency in every sector she'd visited. What could possibly top that? Knowledge, Oron replied, voice deepening. Technology that will revolutionize your work and a protective ward against boardings. He extended a slender hand. From his palm, a small orb of light unfurled like mist, then solidified into a crystalline sphere no larger than Selene's fist. Inside, miniature star clusters swirled in kaleidoscopic colors. Selene's breath caught. Her tactical visor's sensors flared as they attempted to scan the orb, but the crystal's energy signature defied classification. A decade of hauling cargo and she had never seen anything like it. This was not just a promise, it was a tangible token of power. If this is genuine, Selene said quietly, it could power the Wanderer for years. She let her hand hover near the orb, torn between awe and caution. But I need guarantees. Oron's silver eyes gleamed. The item I offer is a fragment of the resonance nexus. A single shard contains enough energy to run a freighter or a starship for a decade. You will captain our vessel in exchange for safe passage. In time, you may choose to keep it. Selene swallowed. If the shard truly came from a place where dimensions overlapped, it would rewrite her understanding of physics. But the risks were immense. A starship gifted by aliens in exchange for a run through pirate-infested space, her rational mind screamed that this was madness. Suddenly, the hush of the tunnel was shattered by the distant rumble of alarms. Red emergency lights blinked to life overhead. Station-wide lockdown, Scylla said, voice tense. Security teams are sweeping the bowels of Helio. Selene's pilot instincts kicked in. They'll check credentials at every junction, she said, pulling out a handheld scanner. We'll never make it through standard routes. She scanned 3 diverging corridors. We'll take the old maintenance shafts, less traffic, fewer patrols. Oron and Scylla exchanged a brief glance that spoke volumes. They fell in step behind Selene as she led the way down a narrower tunnel. The walls grew closer, the ceiling lower. Pipes leaked coolant that hissed in the gloom. Every footstep echoed, every heartbeat thundered in her ears. Why are they after you? Selene asked over her shoulder. Running out of credits doesn't usually trigger a lockdown. They were under guardianship, Oron said softly. Our home world's treasury collapsed. Those who oversaw our departure have been arrested. Now both human and Lumina authorities seek us for answers for revenge. Lumina? The name alone suggested a race of light beings. Everything made sense, the glowing skin, the odd physics in the orb. Selene forced herself to keep pace, mentally charting their path. The loading bay was 2 decks below. they would need to cross a service bridge that ran above the station's main power conduits. A faint hiss echoed ahead. Selene froze and pressed her back against the damp wall. Feet pounded in the corridor ahead, security bots on patrol. Their infrared sensors would note any life signs moving past the shadow. She raised a gloved finger. Oron and Scylla halted. Selene closed her eyes and drew in oxygen. When she opened them, her decision was made. "Follow my lead," she whispered. Slipping into a side niche, Selene crouched behind an access panel. She drew a small EMP emitter from her belt and pressed it against the wall. With a soft click, she triggered the device. A pulse of electromagnetic energy surged through the nearby conduit, tripping the bot's circuits in mid-scan. The patrol drones halted, lights flickering, then collapsed in a heap of deactivated metal. Selene exhaled, heart pounding. "Clear," she murmured. The trio sprinted past the disabled bots, Selene leading them deeper into the station's underbelly. Behind them, alarms grew distant, but the threat remained. Helio Station would not let two fugitives and a human pilot slip away so easily. As they approached the freight elevators that led to docking bay Epsilon 7, Selene's mind raced. She had agreed to carry them for a Starship, yet she still did not know the full stakes. What did Oron and Scylla hope to do at Obsidian Reach, and why had they chosen her? A low rumble vibrated through the metal gratings underfoot. The freight lift's door slid open, revealing a cavernous shaft bathed in red emergency lighting. Cargo crates floated suspended by magnetic holds. At the far end of the bay, docking clamps bristled, Starship silhouette visible beyond the airlock curtain. Selene glanced at her passengers. Oron's silver eyes shone with determination, Scylla's violet gaze held equal resolve. Each of them carried the same question: was this human pilot their savior or their doom? She squared her shoulders. "Next stop, Obsidian Reach," she said, voice steady. "Once we're clear of Helio's long arm, you tell me the rest." Oron nodded, stepping into the lift. Scylla followed. Selene pressed the call button. As the lift began its ascent, the station's alarms pulsed in a distant rhythm, like the heartbeat of a wounded beast. And high above, docking bay Epsilon 7 awaited, with a gift more incredible than any credits could buy. Captain Selene Hayes guided Oron and Scylla into the cavernous docking bay. The airlock doors before them slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Inside lay the Starship they had been promised, a sleek vessel unlike any Selene had ever seen. Its hull curved in smooth lines, reflecting the bay's red emergency lights like a dark mirror. No registry numbers marked its sides. Even from a distance, Selene could feel the faint pulse of the resonance nexus shard coursing through its systems. Stepping across the cargo ramp, Selene ran her hand along the hull's surface. It felt impossibly warm and alive under her glove, a stark contrast to the cold metal of human freighters. The air inside smelled faintly of ionized ozone and something floral she could not identify. She glanced back at Oron. His silver eyes shone with relief and hope. Scylla stood beside him, her violet gaze fixed on the open cockpit door. They crossed the threshold into the ship's main corridor. A soft blue glow emanated from panels set into the walls, illuminating the path ahead. Scylla reached out and touched one of the panels. The lights dimmed briefly, as if answering her presence, then brightened in a gentle wave. Selene swallowed hard. This vessel was alive in ways she did not yet understand. "Welcome aboard," Scylla said, voice echoing softly in the chamber. "This ship is called the Nova's Gift." She spoke the name with reverence. "It has been our home since birth." Selene nodded, still absorbing her surroundings. The corridor branched off to multiple decks. A central staircase spiraled upward toward living quarters and the bridge. Bulkheads bore strange glyphs that shifted when viewed from different angles. Every surface seemed to glow with latent energy. "Show me the bridge," Selene ordered, regaining her composure. "We need to get out of this station." Oron led the way with long, graceful strides. "Follow me," he said. "The bridge is 3 decks up. I will explain the controls as we go." They climbed the spiral staircase. As they ascended, Selene noticed that the gravity felt slightly lighter than normal. Her boots made a faint thud instead of the usual heavy stomp. The corridor walls were lined with viewports showing empty space between station girders. Sparks flew past in zero-G arcs when working drones repaired hull plating above. At the top of the stairs, a transparent floor panel revealed the cargo bay below. Selene paused to peer through. The sight of the damaged bots and their twisted remains made her stomach twist. In the time it took to board, station security might have discovered them. Oron joined her at the railing. "They will not look for us here," he said. "The resonance nexus wards this vessel against outside scans. Only those who carry a shard can enter." Selene eyed the shard in Oron's pocket. It pulsed in time with the ship's own heartbeat. "That explains why I couldn't get a lock on your signature," she muttered. They proceeded down a short hallway into the bridge. The main viewport revealed the cluttered bay, but beyond it Selene could just make out the massive curve of Helio Station's outer ring. Control consoles hovered in the center of the room, arranged in a semicircle around the captain's chair. No seats were bolted to the deck. Instead, bioadaptive fields conformed to the user's body when they approached. Scylla glided to the pilot's station and placed her hand on a smooth control surface. Lights flared across the console as it recognized her. A soft hum filled the room, and the view ahead shifted. The station ring's lights blinked into motion, then faded. Selene joined Oron at the navigation console. "Get us out of here," she said, voice firm despite her awe. "I don't know how long before security forces converge." Oron's fingers danced across an array of hovering glyphs. Instantaneously, the airlock doors at the back of the bridge sealed shut. The hum intensified until it felt like the ship was waking from a long slumber. "Setting course for Obsidian Reach," Oron said. The main viewport blurred, then relit with the endless black of space studded with distant stars. "Engaging sublight thrusters." A low rumble vibrated the deck as the Nova's gift slid out of the docking clamps. Outside the viewport, the station receded. Within moments, the ship slipped through a service tunnel and into open void. Selene pressed her palm to the console, feeling the hull's faint pulse beneath her touch. "Thrusters stable," she confirmed. "No pursuit vessels detected yet." Scylla moved to a side console, her fingers tracing luminous symbols. "I will cloak our signature," she said. "They will lose track of us once we pass the station's sensor matrix." As Scylla worked, Selene allowed herself a moment to breathe. The weight of command settled on her shoulders. She had agreed to this reckless venture in exchange for a starship that could reshape her life. There was no turning back. A sharp buzz interrupted her thoughts. The comm panel lit up with a red icon. Selene tapped it. "Report," she said. A garbled voice crackled through. "This is station control. All vessels must respond to the lockdown order. Helio Station orders you to power down and await inspection. Identify yourself." Scylla cracked open a panel beneath her console and tapped a crystalline node. The display flickered, then cleared. "They will see no response," she said. "Our signal is encrypted by the Nexus shard." Below decks, the cargo bay doors slammed shut, sealed by internal command. Selene's mind raced. They had broken every regulation, stolen a starship, and now faced military-grade pursuit. Yet the Nova's gift handled it all as though by instinct. "Navigator," Selene said to Oron, "plot a jump vector. The fragment's energy will allow a direct hyperspace jump. Can the drive handle it?" Oron's silver eyes met hers. "The shard powers a phase slip. We can cross 4 light-years in minutes, but it risks destabilizing the vessel if we stay in slip too long." Selene nodded. "So we aim for a safe exit, just enough to evade them. Then we regroup." Oron confirmed the vector. The bridge lights dimmed as the ship prepared for slip. Panels in the walls glowed with iridescent patterns. The view outside rippled like heat haze. "Brace yourselves," Selene ordered. A sudden lurch pressed them into the deck as reality bent around the Nova's gift. Stars stretched into streaks of light. Colors danced across the viewport as the ship slipped into hyperspace. The lurch eased, the humming warp resonance faded to a steady pulse. Outside, the void was dark again, but star positions had shifted. They were clear of the station by light minutes, well beyond any immediate threat. Oron released a breath. "We are free for now." Scylla smiled, relief softening her features. "Thank you, Captain Hayes." Selene leaned back in the adaptive chair. "Don't thank me yet, you still owe me answers." Oron nodded. "Of course, we need to reach Obsidian Reach. There we can regenerate the shard and repay your kindness." Selene considered the vastness of space beyond the viewport. If she survived this run, she would command the most advanced vessel known to humankind, and she would have 2 powerful allies in Oron and Scylla. But first, she would need to learn the true purpose of their journey and the cost of harboring Lumina fugitives. Captain Selene Hayes settled into the adaptive chair as the Nova's gift cut through the silent void. The ship's hull pulsed with the gentle heartbeat of the resonance Nexus shard. Outside the viewport, starlight drifted by as though the ship glided on an unseen river. She watched the distant stars blur into faint lines, proof of their recent phase slip. In the calm after the jump, Selene allowed herself a moment to feel both wonder and dread. They had escaped Helio Station, but their flight was far from over. Obsidian Reach lay 3 light-years ahead, and every sector between was red with pirate activity and Confederation patrols. The silence of space pressed against her, reminding her that an unseen threat could arrive at any moment. Behind her, Oron studied a triangular display of floating glyphs that mapped their route. "We will exit slipspace in 30 minutes, he said softly. His silver eyes reflected the map's pale glow. "Obsidian Reach does not use standard docking protocols. We must approach through the southern Delta corridor." Selene nodded, imagining the rocky asteroids and energy storms that surrounded the small moon. Obsidian Reach served as a neutral waypoint for smugglers and traders, a place beyond Confederation law, but only barely. Scylla approached the forward console and placed her palm on a smooth control panel. The lights dimmed in response to her presence, then shone bright again in a welcoming pattern. I am detecting a fluctuation, she said, voice low. The shard's energy is draining faster than expected. Selene felt a jolt of alarm. Explain, she demanded. The Lumina woman's violet eyes met hers. The longer we stay in phase slip, the more the shard leaks into the ship's field. It will power us through slip space, but it also weakens the vessel's hull integrity. Scylla's words hung in the air, heavy with risk. Selene's hand tightened on the armrest. How long can we stay in slip, she asked. Oron tapped at the glyph map. 15 more minutes before stress fractures appear. We can push it to 20, but the gap to Obsidian Reach is 25 minutes of slip. Selene exhaled, weighing her options. They could drop out early, but then they risked pursuit by Helios patrol, or they could stay the course and pray the Nova's gift held together. Her mind raced. A sudden warning light flashed on the navigation console. Scylla's gaze snapped upward. Unidentified vessel approaching, she said. Intercept course. Outside the viewport, a cluster of ships materialized in slip space, their hulls dark and angular. Seconds later, they dropped out of phase, revealing a formation of raider corvettes. Their weapons glowed with red energy and they bore the skull and crossbones emblem. Pirates, Selene growled. Of course. Oron's fingers flew across his console. They must have scanned slip space for our signal. He swiped away a protective field from the weapons console and placed his hand on a floating control symbol. The ship's hidden turret banks lifted from beneath the wings. Scylla moved to the aft station, her slender form melding with the ship's organic curves as she manipulated defense shields. I can strengthen the shields, but it will draw more power from the shard, she warned. Selene rose to her feet. Do it, she ordered. We can't outrun them unless the slip runs clear. As the shields flared into a soft blue haze around the Nova's gift, the raiders opened fire. Bolts of searing plasma slammed into the forward hull. The ship shuddered violently. Warning klaxons wailed through the corridors. Sparks flew along the viewport's edge. Selene grabbed the console rail to steady herself. Return fire, she yelled. Oron engaged the turrets. The banked weapons rotated and locked onto the lead pirate vessel. With a roar, twin beams of emerald energy lanced through the void, striking the corvette's bridge. Explosions blossomed across its hull. Debris spun out in slow arcs. But two more raiders accelerated toward them. Sparks crackled in the corridor behind them. The shields held firm, but the strain began to show. The hull's surface rippled like water under impact. Scylla's hands glowed as she funneled extra energy into the ventral shields. I'm at maximum output, she said, voice strained. If I push harder, the internal conduits will overload. Selene cursed under her breath. There was no time for finesse. Suddenly, the ship lurched again. The viewport cracked with a web of fractures. A low groan rumbled through the bulkheads. Oron's eyes widened. The slip field is destabilizing, he shouted. We're in phase slip too long. Selene knew what that meant. They had pushed the shard's power beyond safe limits. The Nova's gift would tear itself apart if they remained. Plan B, Selene said, heart pounding. Drop out now. She slammed her palm on the emergency exit console. The view outside spun and twisted as the ship left slipspace abruptly. Stars snapped back into position. Space returned to normal, but they were still inside the pirate formation. Outside the viewport, the raiders recoiled at the sudden reappearance. Oron disengaged the slip field. Scylla collapsed to her knees, gasping. The shard's overtaxed, she said. It can't hold the shields any longer. Red warning lights bathed the bridge. The Nova's gift rocked side to side as wave after wave of plasma struck the hull. Selene steeled herself. Direct energy to the main forward cannons, she said. Take them out fast. Oron nodded and tapped into a hidden weapons channel. A massive beam coalesced at the ship's nose. A concentrated lance of pure light shot forward, piercing the nearest raider's engine core. The vessel erupted in a fireball. The others hesitated, reeling from the destructive power on display. Scylla climbed back to her station, pressing a palm to the aft console. She whispered words in her soft, resonant voice. Tendrils of violet energy snaked around the Nova's gift, reinforcing the damaged hull. The crack in the viewport sealed itself, lines of glowing runes tracing the break like a living tapestry. Selene blinked in astonishment. The ship itself was healing. Emergency repairs completed, Scylla said, voice weak, but the shard is nearly spent. Selene felt a cold knot tighten in her chest. Without the shard's power, the Nova's gift was nothing more than a stranded relic. They had used the phase slip and the shields, and the vessel had repaid them with its life. How long until we reach Obsidian Reach? She asked. Oron's silver eyes focused. 2 minutes. Selene glanced at the viewport. The rocky silhouette of the moon grew larger. Twisting canyons and jagged spires jutted out into space like ancient teeth. A cluster of small outposts glowed dimly at the equator, refuge markets and repair yards built into the crags. Selene exhaled and nodded. Hold on, she said, voice steady. We've got company, but we'll make it. Below them, docking towers flared to life as the Nova's gift dropped out of freefall. Tug drones flew out to guide the ship to a remote platform. Security scanners swept the hull, but the Shard's ward deflected their scans. The docking clamps engaged and the ship settled with a final thud. In the silence that followed, Selene sat back in the chair, her uniform scorched and stained but her spirit unbroken. Oron and Scylla slumped at their consoles, exhaustion evident in their posture. Scylla looked up, her violet eyes bright. "You saved us," she said softly. "I don't know how we can ever repay you." Selene shook her head. "You don't owe me anything," she replied. "Not yet, but I need answers. Why are you running, and what will happen when we reach Obsidian Reach?" Oron sighed, leaning back in his console's force field. "You will find both allies and enemies there," he said. "The council that governs the Resonance Nexus meets in secret and they will want their shard back." He paused. "And they will want justice." Selene nodded, determination flaring in her chest. She had taken a gamble for a starship and nearly died for it. Now, on the jagged moon of Obsidian Reach, she would learn the true cost of her decision, docking in the shadowed canyon. The Nova's gift settled onto a hidden platform carved into Obsidian Reach's southern face. Captain Selene Hayes led Oron and Scylla across the metal gangway. Below them, the jagged canyon opened into a swirling mist of ionized gas. Towering spires of rock cut through the haze, lit by scattered clusters of glowing lamplights. The air smelled of hot ozone and damp stone. As they stepped onto solid ground, a tall figure in a dark cloak waited at the platform's edge. "Meeting Envoy Kyans." The figure pulled back his hood. His dark hair glinted with strands of silver. "I am Envoy Kyan," he said, bowing once. His voice was calm but urgent. "Welcome to Obsidian Reach. The council awaits." Selene nodded and gave a curt salute. Kyan turned and gestured toward a narrow path carved along the canyon wall. "Follow me. The council hall lies at the heart of the moon's core." Oron and Scylla exchanged wary glances before falling in line. Approach to the hall. They walked in silence along the winding path. Blasted-out tunnels cut through natural stone, lined with pooling bioluminescent moss. Drifting through the dim light were floating drones that projected ghostly symbols onto the walls. Scylla's violet eyes flickered as she studied each symbol, murmuring their hidden meanings. Selene felt the weight of every step. She had never seen a seat of power so ancient or so mysterious, entering the council chamber. Envoy Kyan paused before a massive doorway framed by glowing runes. He placed his hand on a crystal panel. The door slid open with a low rumble. Inside, a circular chamber stretched wide. Tall pillars of black obsidian rose to a vaulted ceiling lost in shadow. At the far end, three figures sat upon tiered seats carved from living stone. Around them stood representatives of various races, humans in dark uniforms, Lumina in shimmering robes, and others Selene could not name. "A plea for mercy." Selene stepped forward, bowing her head. Oron and Scylla stood at her sides. The tallest counselor, Mistress Verk, leaned forward. Her skin shone like burnished gold and her eyes glowed with inner fire. "You bring fugitives before us, Captain Hayes," she said, voice rich and cold. "They stole a shard of the Resonance Nexus and used it to breach Helio Station lockdown." Selene lifted her chin. "They did not steal from the Nexus itself. They were cast out without credit or counsel. They fled guardians who sought to exploit them." Mistress Verk's demand. Mistress Verk's lips curved in a thin smile. "The shard belongs to the Nexus," she replied. "Its power cannot be hoarded by runaway nobles. Return it now or face the council's judgment." Oron took a step forward. "We fled injustice," he said. "We offer the shard to repay our debt. We seek safe passage, not dominion." Scylla placed a hand on her brother's arm. "We wish only to make amends." Selene's bold stand. Selene straightened and spoke once more. "I vouched for them," she said, voice ringing. "They saved my life and gave me a ship. I stand by them. If you take the shard by force, you doom us all to war." A hush fell over the chamber. Even the floating lantern drones dimmed as if listening. Mistress Verk exchanged a silent glance with the other two counselors. Council debate. The second counselor, Elder Orion, spoke in a voice like thunder. "We must prevent misuse of the Nexus shards." The third, Scholar Vina, replied softly, "True, but we cannot ignore the greed that ruined these siblings' world." Murmurs rose among the delegates. Selene watched each face. Fear, anger, pity, and caution warred across their expressions. Sudden sparks of violence. Without warning, a burst of white-hot energy flared in the chamber's center. A hidden guard leapt forward, crystalline blade raised high. He lunged at Oron with deadly speed. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates screamed and dove for cover. Mistress Verk cried out in shock as the guard's blade arced toward Oron's shoulder. An assassination attempt. Selene sprang into action. She dove between Oron and the blade. Steel rang as the attack struck her side instead. Pain lanced through her torso, but she managed to deflect the guard's arm. The blade skittered off the floor with a shower of sparks. Around them, council guards moved to restrain the traitor. Scylla's protective ward. Scylla chanted under her breath, hands glowing with soft violet light. A dome of energy formed around her family and Selene. The blade fractals in midair shattered against her ward. She pushed forward, crystal shards scattering harmlessly across the obsidian floor. Her voice rose as she intensified the barrier until the wounded Selene and Oron were safe. Envoy Kyan's rescue. Envoy Kyan closed on the traitor from behind. In one swift motion, he tossed a binding net of energy over the guard's body. The man struggled, but the net pulsed with power and held him fast. Kyan shrugged as he dragged the captive off to the edge of the chamber. On orders from the council, he said, as if it were all routine. Fleeing through secret passages. Amidst the stunned silence, Selene grabbed Scylla's hand. This place isn't safe, she whispered. Oron knelt by her side and pressed his palm to her wound. Warm energy seeped into the cut, knitting flesh and cloth together. You're badly hurt, he said, concern filling his tone. She shook her head. We move now. Envoy Kyan led them to a slender doorway hidden behind one of the pillars. A private route, he explained. Follow me quickly. Corridors of living stone. They darted through narrow corridors carved into raw stone. Bioluminescent veins pulsed beneath the walls, lighting their way. The distant echoes of alarm bells and shouted orders chased them through the twisting maze. Selene leaned on Oron's shoulder, still feeling the ache of her wound. Scylla's protective glow flickered with each turn. A hidden sanctuary. At last Kyan reached a vault-like door etched with star maps and glyphs. He placed his palm on the center and the door slid open to reveal a chamber bathed in soft white light. Inside stood several slender columns imbued with crystalline cores. The room hummed with quiet power. This is the Sanctuary of Oaths, Kyan said. Here you'll be safe from prying eyes for a moment. Oron's desperate plan. Once inside, Oron faced Selene and Scylla. His silver eyes burned with determination. The shard is nearly spent, he said. We cannot stay here. If we return to Helio, the Confederation will hunt us. If we stay, the Council will try us, or worse. He paused. But there is another path. The sanctuary holds hidden portals, ancient gates to places beyond obsidian reach. We could leave the moon entirely. Selene's dilemma. Selene pressed a hand to the stone wall, steadying herself. If we abandon the council, we become fugitives of two powers, she said. But if we stay, they will strip the shard and destroy us. She looked at Scylla, whose violet eyes shone with hope and fear. I can't let you die, Selene whispered. Charting new destinations. Oron walked to one of the crystal columns. He brushed his fingers over its facets and the surface rippled to reveal a star chart. Worlds and pathways glowed against the dark. This gate leads to the rimward expanse, he said, tracing a path. Far from Confederation law, we can hide there until the shard regenerates. Stepping into the unknowns. Selene nodded, summoning her courage. She felt the hum of the sanctuary in her bones. Show me how, she said quietly. Oron's lips curved in a small, grateful smile. He placed his hand on the column and a circular portal of pale light opened. Scylla stepped forward, her glow merging with the gate's shimmer. A final look back. Before stepping through, Selene turned and looked at the arched entryway. The council hall lay just beyond, its pillars dark in contrast to the sanctuary's glow. She thought of the risk she had taken, the battles fought, and the friends she had found. With a steady breath, she squared her shoulders and stepped forward into the portal, leaving Obsidian Reach behind, through the gate to the expanse. Selene Hayes felt the rush of motion as the crystalline portal closed behind them. One moment they stood within Obsidian Reach's hidden Sanctuary of Oaths. The next, they emerged into the dim glow of the rimward expanse. The airlock door of the Nova's gift sealed with a hiss, and the viewport revealed a panorama unlike any Selene had ever encountered. Vast tendrils of violet nebula gas swirled around distant stars, and clusters of small asteroids drifted lazily in the void. Here, beyond Confederation cartography, law and order held no sway. Only those brave or desperate enough dared to venture. A new horizons. Oron and Scylla staggered slightly as their bodies readjusted to the expanse's subtle gravity shift. Scylla's violet glow dimmed with exhaustion. Oron placed a steadying hand on Selene's shoulder. We made it, he said quietly, though his voice trembled with relief. Selene exhaled, finally allowing herself a moment's respite. 4 lights blinked on her heads-up display, confirming no pursuers had slipped through behind them. She keyed her comms. Set a perimeter cloak, she ordered, voice firm. I want us undetectable for at least a solar cycle. Within seconds, the Nova's gift's hull shimmered as Scylla wove her resonance ward into the outer plating. The ship faded from standard sensors, an island of safety in the expanse's wild frontier. Assessing the Nova's gift. In the ship's central deck, Selene surveyed the consoles. The vessel still thrummed with the Nexus shards wanting power, but its systems flickered as if running on fumes. Diagnostics, she barked. Show me shield integrity, engine status, and power reserves. Oron tapped a floating glyph map. Panels recalibrated to display real-time metrics. Shields at 20%, he reported. Engines limp at 30, power reserves critically low. Selene frowned. We can't stay here long. We need to regenerate that shard before the ship dies and before someone tracks us down. She turned to Scylla. How soon can the shard recover? The shard's illness. Scylla placed a gentle hand on the console's crystalline surface. Her glow pulsed in sympathetic resonance. The shard requires ambient cosmic energy to rebuild its matrix, she explained. In standard space, this takes decades, but in the expanse's nebula fields, regeneration accelerates if we can harvest concentrated radio waves and high-frequency particles. Selene nodded, steeling herself. So we find a source, something powerful enough to kickstart the process. Oron pointed to a distant cluster of bright orange lights on the holomap. The Ishtar maelstrom, he said. A storm of ionized plasma around a rogue gas giant. Its radiance could feed the shard, but the radiation levels are off the charts. Selene's jaw tightened. That storm is our best chance, plot a course. Charting a power source. Selene entered the coordinates for the Ishtar maelstrom. The ship lurched as its engines strained to push through the expanse's nebular currents. Outside, clouds of violet and blue wrapped the ship like sentinel arms. Meteoric dust sparked against the hull, each impact leaving a brief flare of light. A lure left for drifting salvage wrecks orbiting the maelstrom, Oron observed. We might find an old energy harvester or reactor core to amplify the shard's feed. Selene smirked, and maybe a few pirate skiffs to plunder. She tapped her comms. Prepare the boarding pod, we'll need to deploy external harvest rigs. Scylla's smile was wan but resolute. Let us hope the maelstrom's fury spares us long enough. Navigating the ice nebula. The route wound them through a field of nebular ice crystals, each the size of a shuttle and spinning slowly in the gravity well. Pulsed bursts of static electricity crackled between the shards, imbuing the surrounding space with raw energy. Selene's hands flew over the helm controls. Evasive thruster pattern Delta 7, she called. Maintain 200 clicks distance from the storm's core until we're ready to deploy. Outside, long streamer-like tendrils of ionized gas reached toward the Nova's gift. Shield adapters strained under the buffet. Sparks danced along the airlock seams. Brace for active turbulence, Scylla warned, engaging the field stabilizers. The ship groaned as it pierced deeper. The forgotten dreadnoughts. On her scope, Selene spotted the silhouette of a massive hull half-embedded in an asteroid. Once this had been a Confederation dreadnought, its plating etched with battle scars now corroded by cosmic radiation. The wreck glowed faintly with residual power. That's our target, Selene declared. If the reactor still holds a charge, we can siphon it. Oron plotted an intercept. Its hull is unstable, boarding under fire is risky. Selene grinned. When have I ever played it safe? The ship angled toward the grave, engines straining as the maelstrom's outer bands lashed at them. Boarding under fires. Selene, Oron, and Scylla suited up in magnetic harnesses and climbed into the boarding pod. The thrusters ignited, guiding them toward an access hatch near the dreadnought's rear. Outside, the nebula storm pounded the hull with arcs of lightning. Each strike sent the metals singing. The boarding pod rocked as they docked. Lock the hatch, Selene ordered through comms. Ready the disable charges. Oron laid out microcharge canisters along the hatch's seam. His fingers moved with practiced precision, even as the hull shuddered under a plasma burst. Sparks flew around them. Scylla's violet glow flared, her ward flickering as she repelled stray currents. All set, Oron called. Fire in 3, 2, 1. The hatch shuddered, seals gave, and they slipped inside the dreadnought's silent corridors. Harvesting cosmic energy. The interior was a ruin of blasted consoles and broken security bots. Walls shimmered with patches of corroded plating. The main reactor chamber lay ahead, its doors ajar, revealing the heart of the fallen warship. Scylla led, chanting low protective wards. Follow my light, she whispered. The corridor may collapse at any instant. They crossed a bridge of sparking conduits until they reached the reactor core, a massive crystalline sphere surrounded by inertial dampeners. Its surface flickered with traces of power. Selene set up the energy siphon. 2 crystalline conduits connected the nexus shard housing to the core's outer coils. Oron calibrated the feed valves. Diverting plasma flow, he said. Shields at 60%, now at 80. A low hum filled the chamber as energy pumped into the shard. Scylla's glow intensified, pulsing in harmony with the core. The shard's surface shimmered, filaments growing and weaving in fractal patterns. Dimensional unrest. Suddenly the reactor groaned. The inertial field collapsed and the sphere cracked, releasing a corona of raw energy. The ground trembled, conduits burst hurling molten metal. Scylla cried out, raising her arms. Her ward expanded into a dome of violet light that stabilized the core's fracture, blunting the worst of the surge. Sparks danced harmlessly against the barrier. Selene grabbed Oron's arm. "We've overloaded it," she shouted. "We need to shut the feed off now." Oron frowned, fighting the console's runaway feedback. "I can't shard," drawing all available power. The chamber lurched. Gravity fields failed. Bolts of dimensional light crackled across the walls as though tears in reality itself had appeared. A narrow escape. Selene seized control. "Override," she yelled. She drew a module from her belt, a crude manual inhibitor, and slapped it onto the feed valve. Sparks flew. The conduit ground to a halt. The shard glowed fiercely, then pulsed once and dimmed to its steady heartbeat. The reactor's fracture sealed in a shower of light. The ward dissipated, and gravity stuttered back online. They staggered as alarms wailed. The dreadnought's hull began to buckle. "Time to go," Selene ordered. They raced back along the corridor, dodging debris and flashing lights. Scylla's ward flickered, shielding them as ceilings collapsed. Oron cleared rubble with well-placed charges. They burst into the boarding pod just as the reactor core detonated behind them in a silent bloom of energy. The pod launched away, zooming toward the Nova's gift, which hovered just beyond the wreck's blast radius. Hope rekindled. Selene's boots hit the deck of the Nova's gift with a heavy thud. Oron and Scylla followed, each breathing hard but alive. They gathered around the console, displaying the shard's status. "It's complete," Scylla whispered, eyes shining. The shard's energy ringed full once more, its fractal filaments glowing brilliantly. "At last it has healed." Selene placed a hand on the console, feeling warmth spread through the deck. The ship's systems hummed back to life. Shields soared to full power, engines surged with renewed thrust, and internal lights brightened. Oron smiled. "With this, we can travel anywhere, stay hidden until the Nexus Council's anger fades." Selene met his gaze, determination blazing. "Then we find allies, and we fight for the future of both our peoples." Outside, the Maelstrom's storm clouds roiled, but the Nova's gift slipped away into the violet haze, carrying its crew toward new horizons, and the promise of a destiny they would forge together.